Today on Not Sam Wrestling, Roman Reigns has a fatal four-way at the Royal Rumble. Is this the way to get the title off of the tribal chief? What was Triple H's big announcement? And the question, is blood really back? This is Not Sam Wrestling. What a show. Welcome to Not Sam Wrestling, everybody. Hope you're all doing great. What a week. So much to get into today. So much to talk about on the show. I'm glad that you're all here. So much to look forward to when it comes to the Royal Rumble, and a lot was made of it. Before we get into all of it, of course, Royal Rumble weekend, we're bringing Not Sam Wrestling to Tampa, Florida. The live podcast will be at the SideSplitters Comedy Club in Tampa, Florida, Friday, January 26th, the day before the Royal Rumble. It's a 5 p.m. show. We're bringing Not Sam Wrestling live to Tampa. If you'd like to join us, I'd love to see you there. NotSamLive.com is the place to go for tickets. And boy, oh boy, have we learned a lot about what to expect at the Royal Rumble. Now, what we got on SmackDown was the triple threat match that promised to give us the main event of the Royal Rumble. And it did, by hook or crook, give us that main event. Of course, we're talking Randy Orton versus AJ Styles versus LA Knight. Three men that have a legitimate gripe with Roman Reigns. Roman comes out, full entrance and everything. It would be the end of that match, which is, I mean, by the rules, okay. There are no disqualifications in triple threat matches. It was very theatrical that he had the whole entrance, but it looks super badass too. When he just walked out there, his music is playing, the video is playing, Solo and Jimmy are with him, and he's like, yeah, the tribal chief is here. And he had a different aura about him, a different energy. There was an intensity about him, as if he needed to remind the people in the ring that this wasn't just a game, that he was indeed the head of the table. In doing that, Nick Aldis, off mic, which I thought was clutch, pulls Paul Heyman aside, and Paul Heyman doesn't even want to talk to him. What? Because Paul Heyman is used to having complete control of SmackDown alongside Roman Reigns, and Nick Aldis isn't putting up with it. Nick Aldis is having none of it. Paul Heyman spent all this time creating a power dynamic with Adam Pearce that left it so that Roman Reigns had full control over SmackDown. He doesn't have that with Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis is the new boss that just won't allow it. And I love the Nick Aldis character because, you know, I think that they removed authority figures because they got so annoying. But that's because, for some reason, authority figures in the WWE just had to have such an agenda attached to it. And it got to the point where it was like there's never any payoffs with these things. And when there are, it's never worth the fact that we had to go week in, week out with these annoying authority figures. I mean, last time we did a live, well, maybe it wasn't the last time before last, when we did a live podcast at WrestleMania, Baron Corbin was on the live show, and he was talking about the fact that when he was Constable Corbin, he didn't choose to do 7 segments of Monday Night Raw every week. He got the assignment, and he did it to the best of his abilities. But I think stuff like that is why we think that authority figures are no good in the world of professional wrestling. But I don't agree. I think that authority figures are very good. It's like having a narrator for a movie. Like, there are plenty of times where the narrator is an excuse, where a writer cannot figure out how to tell their story through their characters. So they just add a narrator to kind of voice over the story beats. So you don't actually have to do it with your characters. But when used effectively, like Martin Scorsese is the king of narration when one of the characters is at some point in the future, sometimes from heaven or hell, depending on who they are, telling this story as it goes on. And it doesn't take away from the movie. In fact, it adds to the movie. And I think that that's the way I look at these authority figures. The authority figures, when used properly, are an invaluable resource in getting you in the short term, in the micro, not the macro, but the micro storytelling from point A to point B. But that's when They're neutral parties. They don't have an agenda necessarily. And Nick Aldis coming in without an agenda, but as the voice of people that want logic, whether they like the Bloodline story or they don't like the Bloodline story, either way, they need logic to exist within the storytelling in order to have that suspension of disbelief. And Nick Aldis allows for that. Nick Aldis is the voice of, well, why would they just let them do this? Well, new boss is here. He's not going to just let them do this. And he pulls Paul Heyman aside and he goes, well, you guys just earned yourselves a fatal four-way match. So now we get to the Royal Rumble, and it's Roman Reigns versus AJ Styles versus LA Knight versus Randy Orton. And this isn't something that should surprise anybody that listens to every episode of this podcast, because on Tuesday of last week, we put out an emergency podcast right after The Rock came back and shouted out the tribal chief's name. When The Rock showed up on Monday Night Raw and uttered the words, maybe I should sit at the head of the table, it was on like Donkey Kong, and there was a lot to discuss. So we discussed it on this Tuesday emergency podcast. And yes, when you host a wrestling podcast, sometimes there are emergency shows because these things are emergencies. Life or death. So one of the things that we discussed was the when and the where for this match that is clearly happening, The Rock versus Roman Reigns. And one of the things we discussed was whether the championship was a necessary part of this story. When in reality, you're talking about the tribal chief, you're talking about the head of the table, you got all these different phrases that all mean slightly different but all related things. And that because The Rock versus Roman Reigns is unquestionably the biggest match in wrestling that you could do right now, does it really need the title? A lot of people ask that. Does it really need the title? Well, if you're not going to do it with the title, how do you get it? Because you still have people concerned about Cody Rhodes. What about Cody Rhodes finishing the story? So, of course, one of the propositions that I said was a possibility on Tuesday is the idea that in a fatal four-way scenario, Roman Reigns can lose the title without getting pinned. So Randy Orton can become the WWE champion by pinning AJ Styles or LA Knight. And that will lead us to a Randy Orton versus the guy he pinned match at Elimination Chamber. And then if Cody Rhodes can win the Royal Rumble or win a chamber match or do whatever he has to do to get to WrestleMania to pick his opponent, he can still finish the story by challenging his mentor, Randy Orton. And this is where people are going, okay, see, now I see the road to get there. And you're dealing with a different Roman Reigns. And you felt that on SmackDown. I think that's one of the things that made the segment so interesting, is that Roman Reigns, as it has built since post-WrestleMania, really, has a bloodline that is less populated than it has been since it really started to build. Roman Reigns has less allies now than he has had in a very long time. The bloodline at its peak was Roman, Heyman, Sammy, Solo, Jimmy, Jay. He's down to an unpredictable Jimmy Uso that you can't count on. Solo Sikoa, who may or may not have visions of taking the spot for himself in his eyeballs. And Paul Heyman, who clearly, when Roman is not around, realizes that they could be in more trouble than they have been before. What's unique now as we head into WrestleMania season is, for the first time, Roman has less allies than he's ever had, but also has more enemies than he's ever had. Roman is looking down the barrel. And you heard Heyman on SmackDown. He's not just talking about Randy, AJ, and LA Knight, but also the people that have been calling out Roman Reigns. Cody, Punk, and The Rock. You've got 6 guys that are all saying they want a piece of the tribal chief. That's double the amount of active competitors that there are in the bloodline right now. And so it's led to people going, well, how do we have our cake and eat it too? How do we get this Rock versus Roman Reigns match? And how do we get Cody to finish the story? Well, they keep saying this. Cody doesn't have to finish the story with Roman. Cody's story revolves around the title, not around Roman. Cody doesn't have to beat Roman. Cody can beat Randy. Randy can beat AJ or LA Knight. We can get our Cody story. We can get our Roman Reigns versus Rock match. And that's a possibility, right? Here's the problem. The only issue that I have with that theory is the one thing that people keep forgetting. And it's something that I mentioned right before, second to last podcast of the year last year, so a few weeks ago. And that little kind of fact is that Roman's not losing. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. I understand that in a fatal four-way scenario, Roman can lose the title without getting pinned, then he can go with The Rock, and they don't have to have a title match, and Cody could do that. The only monkey wrench in the whole scenario is that Roman Reigns is not losing the title. Roman Reigns is not losing the title before WrestleMania. Roman Reigns is not losing the title at WrestleMania. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but you've got to deal with the reality, in my opinion. And I could be wrong because I've been wrong before. But in my opinion, the reason that the Fatal 4-Way is not designed to take the title off of Roman so that he can then fight The Rock without the title is because Roman ain't losing the title. It just is what it is. I'm not saying it wouldn't work in the scenario that's proposed. Of course, the math works out just fine, but it's not going to happen. And even if it did, if you're doing Punk and Rollins and you're doing Roman and Rock both at WrestleMania, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Cody and Randy is not headlining the show. Do you want Cody to finish the story so badly that he finishes it against someone that's not Roman Reigns, against a match that's not the main event? Just so you can finish the story. Just so you can put a bow on it. Now we're starting to get obsessive. Is it worth it? I don't think so. I don't think that would do anything for Cody Rhodes, to tell you the truth. To show up on Raw, go, yeah, Cody finished the story. Yeah, but he didn't do it against Roman in the main event last year. He did it against Randy, third from the top, this year. It's not the same thing. Well, no, the story's about the title. It's not the same thing. And then there's this other theory, right? That, no. Sam, you don't understand. You could do Rock versus Roman night 1. And then Roman versus Cody, night 2, Cody finishes the story. I understand how much we want Cody to finish the story. I get it. I'm a Cody fan. I get it. But we're all in agreement that Rock versus Roman is the biggest match in wrestling. As I look at it, to finish WrestleMania, even if it's on a different night, with a match that's not Rock versus Roman, if you've already seen Rock versus Roman, to go to night 2 with Roman versus Cody, people would talk about that in the future. Like they talk about the fact that Triple H and Chris Jericho went on after Hogan and Rock. And I know it's a different night, so it's a different scenario. I got it. But if Roman and Rock is at WrestleMania 40, Roman and Rock is defining WrestleMania 40, and that's just it. Mathematically, you can get to Cody a million ways, but it wouldn't do Cody any good to just be snuck in to a scenario where the whole world is talking about Rock and Roman. That doesn't do anything for Cody Rhodes. Nothing. So, as I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, The Rock is being set up as the ultimate opponent to go against Roman when he's at his most vulnerable, with the least allies and the most enemies. I think we're going to see this a slow destruction, not a total destruction, but just Roman came out on SmackDown, right? And usually his moves are very strategic. We're talking about the character, obviously. Usually the Roman Reigns character acts in a very, very strategic way. But in this one, he came out, he acted on pure emotion with pure aggression, and it bit him in the ass. We usually don't see this from Roman Reigns. This means it's getting to Roman. This means that the pressures and the fact that his back is more up against the wall than ever before is all starting to get to Roman Reigns. And I think that those vulnerabilities being shown are the next chapter of what we're seeing in Roman. But I don't think that's the last chapter in what we're seeing in Roman. Roman's had one multi-man match in this whole title run. He hasn't had that many matches in the title run, to be fair, but he's had one. He's had one multi-man match in the whole title run. WrestleMania 37, Edge, Daniel Bryan. And what happened? He did the unthinkable. He stacked them up. People were even talking then, well, if Edge beats Bryan, technically Edge could be the champion and Roman, blah, blah, blah. Nope, he stacked them up. If where we're going is Rock versus Roman Reigns, I think that as much as people are starting to count chickens and go, well, yeah, they'll put the title on Randy. I think you've got to prepare yourself for the reality that Roman might stack up 3 people at the Royal Rumble. Like, I don't think Roman's done. I think Roman's taking this into the summer, at least. Either beating Hogan's record or having the title taken from him right before he beats Hogan's record. I don't think they're going to do it now. They might. None of my instincts tell me that that's what's going to happen. I have to, if it's me making these decisions, right? Because the rumors are all over the place that the Australian Board of Tourism, because when WWE does a lot of these international shows, a lot of times the shows are paid for by the local government. So it's not really about how many tickets we're selling, how many this, how many that. They're getting large sums of money from the local government, like a lot of the Saudi shows. Saudi Arabian government cuts a huge check to WWE, and they put on this great show. It's a good thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why people talk about the Elimination Chamber being such a bigger deal this year than any other year, right? Because the idea is that, number one, they're in a stadium. Number two, the Elimination Chamber is becoming progressively bigger and bigger. Last year was huge. The Sami Zayn-Roman match was massive. This year, it's in a stadium. This year, Perth is heavily invested into the show. And I think that that's a business WWE probably wants to be in, right? So I think you want to deliver a product that is worth paying a ton of money for. And that's why even the idea of Rock versus Roman happening actually at Elimination Chamber is being floated. And by the way, for all the worry that everybody has, if that is to happen at Elimination Chamber and it's The Rock's last match, then Cody's WrestleMania match is against a Roman Reigns who has beaten The Rock. It's against an even stronger Roman Reigns. So that's a good thing for Cody. But I don't think that's going to happen, though, right? Because somebody filed like a Freedom of Information or something. I don't know. I don't know how the information got out there. But apparently there is word that the Board of Tourism or whoever it is in Perth wanted The Rock on the show. I think that The Rock will be in Australia. But I just don't think that there's any way that I would do The Rock versus Roman Reigns not at WrestleMania. It's especially if it's WrestleMania 40. 1, 10, 20, 30, 40. It's a multiple of 10. It's a biggie. What happened at WrestleMania 30? Yes-omania. WrestleMania 20 was like the beginning of Then, Now, Forever. WrestleMania 10, finally they put the title back on Brett. WrestleMania 1, well, it's the granddaddy of them all. It's where everything starts. I mean, I think that you got to headline WrestleMania 40 with the biggest match, arguably, that WrestleMania has ever had. Right now, I think that Hogan and Rock have that title. But I just don't think there's a bigger vibe than Roman Reigns versus The Rock at WrestleMania, which is why I think The Rock will be in Australia, but I don't think he'll be there for the Roman Reigns match. I think one of two things could happen. Number one, you could see The Rock and Roman have a contract signing, have a stare down, have something going on. Number two, you could see The Rock in a warm-up match. You could see The Rock against an Australian athlete like Grayson Waller. You could see The Rock against Austin Theory. You could see The Rock in a tag match, right? Maybe that's the deal. Maybe The Rock tags with, whoever. Maybe it's The Rock and not LA Knight. Maybe it's The Rock and AJ Styles versus Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa. And you can go to WrestleMania with Solo versus AJ or something like that. But you might be going, Sam, what are you, crazy? You think they're going to give up The Rock's first match back at Elimination Chamber and not do it at WrestleMania? No, I'm not crazy. I'm somebody who watches the product. I'm somebody that's thinking, well, what kind of precedent has been set? I don't know. Maybe the fact that we just saw on Monday Night Raw the Awesome Truth reform. The Miz and R-Truth come together to have a tag match with the Judgment Day. What's the most famous match that the Awesome Truth participated in? It was Miz and R-Truth versus John Cena and The Rock at Survivor Series 2011 in Madison Square Garden. Before The Rock returned for Once in a Lifetime and then had a second Once in a Lifetime match. The Rock's first match back was at the Survivor Series before WrestleMania, and it was a tag match. So the idea that The Rock won't have a warm-up match is not a fair idea. I'm not saying it's a definite idea, but I am saying that they would never do something like this. Well, they have done something like this. In fact, this exact thing. So I think it's very possible that if we know it's going to be The Rock and Roman Reigns, that we could see if we're going to see The Rock at Elimination Chamber, why not have The Rock have a match at the Chamber and then also do The Rock versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania? Right? I mean, have The Rock's return be its own big deal and then have The Rock and Roman Reigns be its own big deal. And then the thing about the title, well, it doesn't need to have the title. Does it need to have the title? No. Is it essential? No. If Roman lost the title, am I not going to watch Rock versus Roman? No, I'm going to watch it regardless. But I said it once, I said it 1,000 times. The reason Roman Reigns wears the lei that allows him to be called the tribal chief, the reason Roman Reigns is the one that sits at the head of the table is because he is the one who feeds the Anoa'i bloodline family. The head of the table goes beyond just the Anoa'i family. It applies to the guy who runs the show. When Roman Reigns, what was it, in the build-up to that Logan Paul match where he's talking to the camera and you just see Roman come alive? This is my camera. That's my ring. These are my people. This is my arena. I'm the head of the table. Go back to the birth of the bloodline, the birth of this Roman Reigns. And the birth of this Roman Reigns is not just about the elders. The birth of this Roman Reigns is the fact that he takes credit for the business of the WWE, that he takes credit as the one who holds control over SmackDown and feels that all members of the roster should have reverence for him. If that's who the head of the table is, but someone else is the champion of the show, but you're still having Roman Reigns defend the honor of being the head of the table, then what you're telling people is, yes, he's the undisputed champion over here, but that guy's the head of the table. Roman is still the top guy. And for everyone that says, well, you got to pass the torch, you got to pay it forward, for Roman to lose the title and then to continue to be the top guy allows none of that energy that is built by having a 1,200-day-long title run. None of that energy travels with the title. Because what he's saying is you can have the physical belt, but all of the energy and equity that I've built, I'll maintain that. because I'm going to go wrestle The Rock, and I need that to be the one to wrestle The Rock. And if you're not passing along the equity with the title, then what did we do all this for? You mean to tell me that we're just going to go ahead and end this title run because The Rock's here and we just got to real quick, fix some things so we can make every single match happen? That's not the way it's going to be. To gain some, we're going to lose some others. And look, I mean, Roman is still calling out, and Heyman is still calling out Cody. He's still calling out Punk. He's calling out all the members of this triple threat match that were on SmackDown. He's calling out The Rock. What is the third rule of Notsam Wrestling? Everything counts. Meaning, he ain't calling out Cody so that Cody can fight Randy Orton. He ain't calling out CM Punk so that CM Punk can go have a rivalry with somebody else. Like, this is all, everything counts. The arc that I see for Roman is holding the title for several more months. Several. Who knows how much longer. But eventually, as I said, I stand by everything that I said on my prediction show. Eventually, Solo resents the fact that Roman won't allow him to interfere in matches anymore. And a Solo distraction causes the thing to end. The title goes on to the next person, and Solo destroys Randy Orton the way he destroyed, Roman Reigns the way he destroyed John Cena. Roman Reigns disappears for a while. Now we're into 2025 when Roman finally returns as a babyface to fight Solo. What ends up happening is, as he's fighting Solo and beats Solo, now he stands triumphant, but realizes that every ghost of his past, everyone that he ever crossed, is right there waiting for their pound of flesh. Everyone. Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, everyone. Go down the list. Lesnar, Cena, Cody, Knight, Orton, everyone. He's made Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens. He's made an enemy out of absolutely everyone. And so when he comes back a year from now, a year and a half from now, and he's ready to be a babyface, he's going to have a lot of people that are going to be looking for answers. And that's just where I see it going. That WrestleMania 37 is Roman piling a couple guys up on top of each other. WrestleMania 38 is Roman beating Brock. WrestleMania 39 is Roman destroying Cody's dream. And WrestleMania 40 is Roman beating The Rock. And then we move on from there, and people go like, wow, this will kill Cody Rhodes. As if last year didn't happen at all. I was on Busted Open on Friday, trying to console Dave LaGreca about the reality of what we're facing. People like Dave are afraid. I get it. They're Cody fans. I'm a Cody fan. This will kill Cody Rhodes. You got to have a lot more faith in Cody Rhodes than that. This won't kill Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes, first of all, Cody Rhodes does not have to finish the story at WrestleMania, right? Cody Rhodes is going to be full-time in WWE, not just this year, but next year and the year after, and who knows how long. So maybe it'll be another year. Maybe it'll be 2 years before Cody finishes the story. Maybe it'll be 6 months. You mean to tell me that Cody doesn't have to finish the story with Roman Reigns, but he does have to finish the story at WrestleMania? That doesn't hold water to me. But I really think, because you go like this, well, a lot of people thought Cody was dead after WrestleMania last year, and he wasn't. Not by a long shot. Cody's bigger now than he was going into WrestleMania last year. He's bigger. So I don't know what the basis is, except that it would be difficult to do it twice, but it's difficult to do it once, and he did it once. And you go, wow, yeah, but that's because he walked right into a scenario with Brock. And by the way, after WrestleMania last year, I remember reading people worried that Cody Rhodes getting beat up by Brock Lesnar was going to kill Cody Rhodes even worse, and it didn't. It led to this great story and this amazing SummerSlam moment. People like the Cody-Brock match better than they like the Bloodline match at SummerSlam. So, I think that anybody who goes, Cody's dead after WrestleMania, it's like, okay, well, at WrestleMania, Cody still has options, right? Cody can still face Randy Orton at WrestleMania. There's a lot of people Cody could face. Who knows? Somebody could return. Goldberg could return and face Cody. There's plenty of people Cody could face at WrestleMania. And just go, and I'm not finishing the story. And not finishing the story can be the story of Cody at WrestleMania. All you have to do is figure out how somebody else takes it away from him. You can't make it seem like The Rock coming back is what takes the story from Cody Rhodes. Somebody comes and robs Cody of the opportunity to finish the story. And that person becomes the enemy at WrestleMania. That could mean the person who eliminates him in the Royal Rumble and then maybe comes in and doesn't allow him to win the Elimination Chamber like Shawn Michaels did with The Undertaker. If somebody stops Cody, whoever it is, it could be anybody, stops Cody from going to WrestleMania to finish the story, then boom, money. You're good to go. You got an opponent for Cody at WrestleMania. And then you go, okay, well, what about after WrestleMania? People will be pissed. Really? Okay. What if after WrestleMania, CM Punk beats Seth Rollins, CM Punk and Seth Rollins embrace. Seth Rollins puts the stamp on Punk and says he's going to step away for a bit because he's got an injured back because everything counts. And then Cody comes out. And this isn't Cody finishing the story. This is Cody staring right into the eyes of CM Punk. And we go right after WrestleMania, the night after WrestleMania, we start Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk. You mean to tell me people are going to be so upset that he didn't finish the story, even though he had a good story at WrestleMania about not finishing the story, that they'll be so upset that they're not going to tune in to see Cody Rhodes and CM Punk? Okay. On what planet are people not going to be interested in Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk? And then when that's done, whether Cody wins the title or not, maybe Cody can win the title and he can acknowledge, I still haven't finished the story. Right? Or not win the title. And again, shake CM Punk's hand and go, all right, Phil, you're the man, but I need to finish the story. However you do it, you still have it in play. I mean, Roman brought it up. Roman and Heyman are talking about it now, and everything counts. Story's not going away. We're not pretending it doesn't exist, but we're also not pretending there aren't things that you can do. There aren't a lot of interesting options for Cody Rhodes. I think the only problem with the WWE right now is you could argue there are too many options, that we don't get them all, right? That's what's upsetting everybody, that we're not getting everything. That's what I want too. I want to be able to have everything, but and I'm telling you, I say, well, all we want is to be able to have everything, but we can't. And then people go, well, you could do night one, night two. No, I would not do that to Cody. I would never. To showcase Rock and Roman Reigns in the main event of a WrestleMania and then go, okay, but good news, tomorrow Cody has to follow that. I mean, come on. Monday morning. Think about Monday morning. Cody Rhodes is the WWE champion. He's finished the story. He's beaten Roman Reigns. And what is every newspaper publishing? Pictures of Roman and The Rock. The hell does that do for Cody Rhodes? That's what you want for your guy? It's not what I want for my guy. It's going to get interesting. I could be totally wrong. Roman could lose the title at the Rumble. Rock and Roman could happen at Elimination Chamber. It's all possible. And that's the beauty of it right now. Everything is being questioned. You're watching Raw and SmackDown, and you're wondering if blood is back. Did you see that? On Raw, Becky Lynch has her match with Nia Jax. And Nia Jax does something fairly shocking. And that was beat Becky Lynch. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. Nia Jax beats Becky Lynch, but even bigger, Becky had blood, which I thought fit very well into their story because the whole thing was based around the thing from Becky's injury back in the day when she was supposed to have a match with Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series, and Nia Jax punched her in the face for real, broke her nose, shook her up, took her out of the main event of Survivor Series in real life. It also made Becky Lynch, that one image of her bleeding but standing in the crowd, triumphantly with that blue SmackDown shirt on. That was the night the man was solidified. So the fact that we're going back there, I love it because everything counts. But you had Becky bleeding in that match, and then on SmackDown, 4 days later, triple threat between AJ, Randy, and LA Knight. Yeah. And LA Knight's bleeding. And it's interesting because you can't just say, well, blood is back, because I think if you go to the YouTube, WWE's YouTube presentation of it, there's a scene where Roman is grabbing LA Knight by the face. And in real life, there was blood all over LA Knight's face. But in the thumbnail, they've edited the blood out. And if you watch it back on YouTube, they got the full match on the YouTube, on WWE's YouTube channel, and they do the black and white thing when they show it. But I think on Raw, I think they might have shown Becky's blood in full color for the first time in a long time when they aired that package of here's what the history is between Becky and Nia Jax. I think that was it. There was some instance of older footage of a bleeding superstar, and they actually showed the blood, which they haven't done in forever. So the question is, has policy changed? With Triple H firmly in charge of the creative, has it changed? And as I was watching Raw specifically this week, maybe not SmackDown as much, and that would make sense because, the rules of cable and broadcast television are completely different. But when I was watching Raw this week, it did feel like there was a little more edge to the product. And maybe that's because Rock was dropping asshole bombs and douchebag bombs and stuff like that. And maybe that coupled with the blood made me go, hey, what's going on here? But it just felt a little more edgy, I'll say, than usual. So is blood back? I think it's a little premature to say that blood is back. But what I will say is, up until recently, they would have stopped the match. They would have had LA Knight and Becky Lynch both kind of roll to the outside and try to clean them up. And they certainly would not have, they would have absolutely tried to avoid showing them on camera. They would have not, because they did full on close-ups of both LA Knight and Becky Lynch. I don't know that either of those two were done intentionally. I certainly don't think LA Knight was done intentionally. And the only thing that makes me think that Becky's could have been intentionally was just because of how well it worked in the story. But I think that they're just a little more lenient about it, which is good, because I don't think it's good for anyone's product to have a blood fest. I think that does. I think a lot of bleeding will make it so that parents aren't watching with their kids, not every parent won't watch with their kids, but some, it is one of those things that there's a lot of blood or you can just count on it. It does limit the audience. But if there's blood in kind of appropriate places, it's not gratuitous. I think it can be really helpful in the storytelling. And I think both instances of the blood this week was really helpful in the storytelling. And even if the plan wasn't necessarily to bring blood back full time, I certainly feel like it's in the zeitgeist after this week. We got some new stables this week as well. A couple of them, actually. They're both new. The Undisputed Kingdom, which was named, I guess technically they were around for last week's show, if you want to get into real semantics about it. But for all intents and purposes, they were named and made their debut on AEW Dynamite this week. That's Adam Cole, The Kingdom, Wardlow, and Roddy Strong. So the 5 of them who were also the ones, obviously, behind the devil masks. And I do think that they did a good job of giving them motivation of winning all the titles. And while I don't see the world title coming off of Samoa Joe anytime soon, I do think that since Taven and Bennett have the Ring of Honor tag titles, putting the AEW International Championship on Roderick Strong would be a good thing, right? And then it's up to Wardlow, because Adam Cole's still injured. It's up to Wardlow to get that match with Samoa Joe. And I think if you put gold on all members of the Undisputed Kingdom other than Wardlow, then you're going into a match between Wardlow and Samoa Joe where there's at least some actual motivation where you go, okay, depending on how far they want to go with this Undisputed Kingdom thing, Wardlow might actually win. Which is good. You need to believe in him, especially because there are reports now that MJF could be out up to a year. Regardless, we don't know how long MJF will be out for. So the idea that they all jumped MJF and we're going to get a payoff to that story, well, that's not happening anytime soon, especially because Adam Cole is injured anyway, so we're not getting the MJF-Adam Cole match. Now, I think that they need to do a little bit of a better job of defining this group. Like, I still couldn't necessarily tell you why Wardlow is there other than he hates MJF. But if the group's not really solely about hating MJF, then I think you got to do a little bit of a better job for me explaining why Wardlow is there and why even without a mask, he can't use some hair product, when he's going out there, which I know easy for me to say. But it's a real cool group. It's a group of real cool wrestlers. But I'd love for them to have some kind of hook, for lack of a better term, that would make it so you're really like, oh man, there's some real depth in this faction, The other new faction was Karrion Kross's faction, which to my knowledge doesn't have a name yet, but that's Karrion Kross, the Authors of Pain, Scarlett, and Paul Ellering, which Paul Ellering, he was only with the Authors of Pain on the main roster for one night. Of course, Paul Ellering was the manager of the Authors of Pain during their time in NXT. And then as soon as the Authors of Pain showed up on the main roster, Paul Ellering was gone. And now we just have the Authors of Pain. I think it's interesting, It's almost like, well, who is the... Because I go, well, if Karrion Kross is the brain behind this group, which it feels like he is, he's the centerpiece, then what is Paul Ellering's role? Is it just there to add some historical significance? Is it just to add numbers? Is it because he looks cool with Authors of Pain? I don't know. But it feels like, historically, Paul Ellering is one of the greatest tag team managers of all time. He brought Rocco, the Legion of Doom's dummy, ventriloquist dummy, into the WWE. There are probably some other things that he did before then that might have been slightly more impressive, but still, that was one of the things that he did. No, Paul Ellering... became very famous, and he's been in War Games matches. He did 6-man tags with Hawk and Animal. Like, this is a guy who, if you were a fan of the Road Warriors before they got to WWE, which I would hope most people were, Paul Ellering was essential, an essential member of that group, which is interesting because that's a second tag team now. Paul Ellering with a tag team. There's just something about Paul Ellering that Vince goes, I don't think so. He signs the Road Warriors. He's like, I don't need Paul Ellering. Eventually, he brings him in, but not at first. Then he brings Authors of Pain up to the main roster. He goes, I don't need Paul Ellering. It's just something about him. I think he's great. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I almost feel like he should be doing the talking for the whole group. But we'll see. I mean, you got to give it a second to find its legs. And I know you'd say, wow, what about the Undisputed Kingdom? They've only been around for a week too. Well, not really, because number one, they're all top guys. And number two, they've technically been on TV for months. They just had devil masks on. So that the foundation of that story is very deep. Whereas this one, all we heard about the Authors of Pain was that there were rumors that they had been re-signed like a year ago and were just waiting for a debut. I think it's a cool look. The Authors of Pain are beasts. I old school wrestling heels, and I think it's a good thing. I mean, I think that does it kind of cement Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits finally as baby faces? Because I think that that's something that's plagued that faction, is that we don't even know if they're good guys or bad guys. They just look cool together, and all three of them are awesome. But I think that maybe it is something where you bring Bianca Belair into that group and just really babyface them up, just make them a strong babyface faction, which I don't think is a bad thing. People love cheering for the Street Profits, and people love Lashley, dude. Like, when given a chance, people love Lashley. Nobody was disappointed when he won the WWE Championship. Like, there's just something about, because that guy is like a low-key, elite-level ass kicker. His name just doesn't come up enough. And I feel like if you just kind of gave people permission to cheer that dude, well, now you've got somebody that can go to the moon. You can start with Karrion Kross, the Authors of Pain, and Scarlett versus Bobby Lashley, the Street Profits, and Bianca. So now you got your 4 versus 4 with Paul Ellering on the outside of the ring just hitting that newspaper. I hope he still got it. And then eventually get Lashley to the point that he's a real, like, big-time babyface character. They're doing really good with babyfaces now, so it wouldn't shock me if that was the direction that they went in, but I think it would be a good one. We got a Triple H announcement, of course, earlier this week. I think a lot of people put a lot of eggs into that announcement basket, not realizing that it wouldn't be as big. And I don't think that people were wrong in thinking that it could be a big one, because basically what you had is, on the same night, you go Triple H announced that a former WWE champion will be on Raw. And we get the greatest of all time, Jinder Mahal, coming out. I'm kidding, of course. But Jinder was awesome. I talked about it on the emergency pod. But you had The Rock come back. Triple H says a former WWE champion is coming back, and The Rock comes back. On the same night, Michael Cole says, hey, tune into this preview special on Peacock. Triple H is going to make an announcement. And you're like, oh, well, this is the field that we're playing on right now. This is the level that we're at in terms of announcements. Let's go. But the announcement is, it's a location of a premium live event. So I think that they realized, like, look, people are tuning in because people were like, yo, WWE is going to own TNA. That's what a lot of people thought. That's what the internet thought. WWE is announcing that they've acquired TNA, which isn't true. They haven't acquired TNA. But people were like, Thursday? Impact's on Thursday. TNA's streaming with Endeavor Streaming. WWE's buying TNA. And it's like, well, it's a little more complicated than all that. But, so Triple H ended up making the announcement earlier in the day on Thursday on social media instead of doing it on the Peacock show, which was probably the right move. And I do wonder if it was a way to kind of go, hey, man, people think this is something bigger than it actually is. Let's not fall into that trap of promising a big announcement and not delivering, because that's gone wrong for people in the past. And he sees it. So the announcement was, of course, that Toronto is getting a big weekend in July. July 5th, Money in the Bank. Or no, July 5th is SmackDown. July 6th, Money in the Bank. July 7th, NXT Heatwave. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a big weekend for Toronto, which is awesome. But, yeah, not like earth-shattering, TNA has been acquired. Awesome. However, hopefully that does open the door for me to bring the live podcast up to Toronto. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be a fun thing to check out? And either way, we're talking about Australia. Another live, premium live event that's international for WWE. Speaking of international, too, before we move on to emails, which we'll get to in a moment, how about Dolph Ziggler? We're at a very interesting point right now because the last group of releases, all of those 90 days ran out right around the beginning of the year. And we're seeing a lot of people doing interviews. The Mansoor and Mace are out there on the indie circuit, getting ready for going to GCW, going all over the place. And I love to see it. I don't think we've seen anybody debut for AEW yet. That's not to say that they won't. But what we did see at Wrestle Kingdom this week or last week was Nick Nemeth, the former Dolph Ziggler, hanging out in the front row. And it was interesting because Nick and his brother Ryan Nemeth, who's in AEW, showed up, the two of them, and watched the tag team title match. So you're like, are Nick and Ryan going to team up and go to New Japan? But then the old show-off, former Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth, makes his intentions known when it goes down and promos are cut between himself and Dave Finlay and centering it around the new IWGP Global Championship. The UK and the US Championship, it's all combined into a global championship. So basically, he made his intentions clear that that's what he was after. A shot at Dave Finlay and the global championship, which, I think a lot of people were surprised in this day and age that Dolph showed up in New Japan. But I think it's going to be great. I think that Dolph Ziggler is a very interesting person to look at. He's definitely the biggest name in this set of releases. And he was in WWE for 19 years. But the whole time that he was in WWE, all you got was people going, he's underutilized, underrated. He should be a top guy. He should be a main eventer. He's the best guy in the Fed. He's the best guy there is. Dolph rules. Can you imagine if they would just let him do this, if they would just let him do that, if they would just give him this opportunity or that opportunity? Well, now, after all this time, Nick Nemeth finally gets the opportunity to prove people right or wrong, to find out what happens when the leash is off. And I think when you look at the landscape, the best place that he can truly showcase what he can do without handcuffs on the biggest scale possible is New Japan, right? Because if he goes straight to AEW, then you're still working under this umbrella of AEW, and you're still going to be put into specific stories and everything. You might have a little bit more freedom with what you can and can't do than you would in WWE. But ultimately, it's not like, hey, when left to his own devices, we were right. This guy is this good, which I think is what you get with Nick Nemeth doing stuff with New Japan, and it also gives him the opportunity to work all over the place. Like, he's already advertised for wrestling in Puerto Rico. He's doing a thing in Australia. He's called the Most Wanted. Most Wanted. He put out a great vignette. I love the vignettes people put out. One of my favorites was when Ambrose first left WWE and he became a free man, and we see Jon Moxley. The name Jon Moxley returns, and he put that great self-produced vignette in the prison. Nick Nemeth put out a great kind of 80s action zombie movie vignette that you should definitely check out if you haven't yet, where he's like a combination of like Marion Cobretti meets Snake Plissken. Just every awesome, badass 80s dude beating the you-know-what out of bad guys and monsters. So cool. So cool. Who else had a great vignette, self-produced vignette, was the former Elias, now Elijah. He did this whole thing where he was walking through the forest, and Elias was burned so that Elijah may rise from his ashes. And it was very interesting because remember WWE was kind of doing something like that, like where they showed like Elias's tombstone or something like that, and then just never really did anything with it. So I don't know where he ends up. I think TNA would be a real good spot for Elijah. And that's another spot where kind of creatively, I don't know, if you want to show what you can do in the ring without handcuffs, especially somebody like Ziggler, the former Ziggler, New Japan works. I think if you want to kind of showcase real character work, and what you can do, when you just use your own brain, TNA can be a real good spot for that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in TNA. And of course, at Wrestle Kingdom, we also got Naito finally winning in the main event. He won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship from Sonata. I'm such a Naito fan. I know he's, his body has been through it. That style of wrestling will do that to you. But still, there's just, at the height of the Los Ingobernables de Japón, when he just was running around with that Intercontinental title, not caring about nothing, throwing it around. Oh, he was my favorite. So I'm real glad to see Naito win the big one this year at Wrestle Kingdom. And Tama Tonga, who has said that he's going to wrap up with New Japan this month, won the Never Openweight Championship, which is kind of a surprise because he said he's kind of wrapping it up and plans on going stateside, which I would imagine, and maybe there's like a big match in 2 weeks where they just want to pass the title off to somebody else. I wouldn't be shocked to see Tama Tonga end up in WWE. I think that's probably where he's a big dude. He's got lineage. He's Aku's son. He's awesome. Good interview. I feel like I would be shocked if Tama Tonga does not end up in WWE, and that's kind of what he does. Hey, I'd be shocked to not hear from you. I won't allow it to happen. Let's go to the emails. Of course, if you want to email in, the email address is notsamwrestling@gmail.com. That's notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Don't forget, January 26th, that's Friday, is the date of the live Not Sam Wrestling podcast in Tampa, Florida. You can get tickets at notsamlive.com. It's a 5 p.m. show. We're going to have great guests. It's going to be awesome. We're going to start announcing those guests soon as well. So keep following on social media. And we're going to be doing our merch drop soon. This weekend, I was designing merch with our partner over at Triumph Printing. So, this drop is coming very, very soon for the winter. And one more thing, housekeeping. Thank you for all the positive comments on the interview with Edge that we dropped last week. Adam Copeland, one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. Having him in the Not Sam studio is just tremendous. And we can talk more about that on another episode. Email in if you want me to talk more about that. Just so much to cover. Steven writes in, first time, long time. Here's my pitch for Roman's road to WrestleMania. Okay, because I gave you something. Roman versus LA Knight versus Randy Orton versus AJ at the Rumble. Right. The match ends with Randy looking like he's going to win over Roman. AJ phenomenal forearm to Randy. LA hits the BFT on AJ. Roman has rolled away, and then Roman spear, stack, and pin. I love that. Love that. Comes out looking very strong, no interference. LA has been pinned twice, so his title opportunity is over for now. I like that. AJ versus LA at the Elimination Chamber. I'm good with that. Randy versus Roman at the Chamber. Fine with that. Roman retains via cheating from Solo. Solo starts to get tired of constantly saving Roman. I do that a little differently. I have Solo getting tired of Roman not wanting him around, even though he's helping. Punk wins the Rumble. Cody wins a stacked chamber match. Roman versus Cody at Mania. Cody wins, have Solo's music hit, and he doesn't come out and show Roman he's on his own. Dude, this email was sent yesterday. We're just going to ignore The Rock? What are we doing? Don't send me these emails. This makes no sense. Everything was fine until you didn't even acknowledge that The Rock is back? What are we talking about? Gran writes in, I love how Sam's emails work, guys. First, a crazy fantasy booking idea pops up in my head and makes me feel like a genius. Then I go ahead and send it over to him full of excitement. He proceeds to shit all over it, explaining why it sucks. I immediately realize that it actually does suck. Like, what was I thinking? It gets me every time. I love it. I appreciate that. I'm glad that you know the system. I love you guys for writing it. I hope nobody takes it personally. So it's finally time for the roles to reverse. Oh, it's time for Sam to face judgment on his speculation regarding the bloodline. Ooh, I love it. I love having my feet held to the fire. Personally, I think Cody finishing the story at WrestleMania 40 is a must. It isn't. They've tried so hard to make him the babyface, and Cody beating Roman, the ultimate feel-good moment. A loss yet again and a heel turn would destroy everything he has built in the last years. I'm also pretty sure they're not going to have a historic reign like that and in any other show except WrestleMania. I'm definitely not against Gunther being the guy, but I don't think he needs it as desperately as Cody does. Well, okay, so that goes back to me saying Cody can turn heel, which I don't have Cody. Well, I don't remember if it was right after WrestleMania or whatever. Cody has a way about him where he can not fully turn heel, right? Like he turns heel for this story with Punk, but he's not all the way over here. He's not actually doing anything wrong. And then he can go back to being a babyface after that. That's something Cody is very capable of doing. But even if he does, I'm okay with you. If like that was wild speculation. That was a reckless prediction. I said it was going to be reckless predictions. That was a reckless prediction when I have Cody turning heel. But there's no way that Cody has to finish the story at WrestleMania 40. That's not true. So I will accept you saying, come on, bro. You can't turn Cody heel. He's the top babyface. I'll accept that. We'll have a discussion about it because there are a lot of other guys now. Not to say Cody's not needed, but to say you can tell new stories. But I won't accept, no, if they don't finish the story at WrestleMania 40, the whole thing is ruined. That's not true. Sal writes in, Sam, I was curious your thoughts on The Rock's condition. Specifically, his last match was in 2013. If I'm not mistaken, he got injured and needed surgery. He's now 51. Is this a risk or at least something WWE needs to think about? Well, sure, but it's a risk for everybody. I mean, people get injured. You know, Adam Copeland is 50, and he just did a Flaming Tables match. You know, yes, Rock got injured in his 2013 match, but he didn't get injured in his 2012 match. He had two of them in 2012. He didn't get injured. These things happen sometimes. But to say, well, 10 years ago, The Rock got injured, so maybe he'll get injured now, is like, well, we'll train specifically so that doesn't happen. A match involving The Rock is going to be laid out move for move. Right? Like every precaution is going to be taken. And there's no reason not to take those precautions. But luckily, Roman and The Rock are two of the greatest to be able to do it right now. So even with precautions, it would be fine. If he goes into Mania against Reigns in a singles match, what kind of match would you expect? Maybe a similar situation like Stone Cold? No. Perhaps a tribal council setup in an impromptu match or something short? No. Finally, how mad will you be if they set up a match for WrestleMania 41 like they did with Cena? I don't think that would be the right move because it would tell. I just don't think they would do it. I mean, I think ultimately Cena suffered. Well, I don't know if he suffered. I think it was tough for Cena. The build was tough. I don't think that's going to happen. And no, I would not be happy if they announce now that it's happening a year from now. You know that because it's already been done too. No, I would not be happy. No, but I think that you know, to do the same thing they did 2 years ago would be silly. And the money on the marquee is Roman Reigns versus The Rock. You can't justify not doing Roman versus Cody if you're just saying Roman is going to have tribal council at WrestleMania. Like, you can't do that with Roman Reigns. You could do that with Kevin Owens. You can't do it with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. So it's a match. If they're doing it, they're doing it. Roman Reigns versus The Rock. That's what you're buying a ticket for. That's what you're buying Peacock subscription for. When you go to the WrestleMania Superstore, there are t-shirts and programs and hats and foam fingers and everything imaginable that says Roman Reigns versus The Rock. Biggest thing ever. That's what it would be. Ultra Boy writes in, Sam, so everyone wants to talk about WrestleMania predictions, but no one's talking about the Stand and Deliver match card will look like. Well, we're a little far from Stand and Deliver, right? I know it's the same, it's equidistant to WrestleMania, but WrestleMania is the show of shows. There's a premium live event before Stand and Deliver. So, you know, we're not there yet. I think that Cora Jade will be champion by then. Maybe run it back with Roxanne. We'll probably get Trick versus Carmelo. Maybe Dragon Lee versus Lexis King or Dijak. I don't really know what Breaker or Ilya will be doing then? You got any ideas on how you think the card will be set up by April? Also, when Tiffany gets called up, do you think there's a chance of her being paired with Ludwig Kaiser? I don't see why those two I mean, I get it, but I don't see why those two characters would be paired up. Like, it would kind of turn Ludwig Kaiser into a comedy act because Tiffany Stratton is like the polar opposite as a character of Ludwig Kaiser. So, no, I don't see them being paired. And I mean, it's impossible to know how the card will shape up by April. Maybe I'll talk to you in February about it. Maybe we'll talk after Vengeance Day at some point about it. But, like, I don't know. In terms of Breaker, like, I don't know. Corbin and Breaker, didn't they talk about teaming up this week or last week on NXT about being in the tag title tournament? Maybe they'll be doing something like that. I don't know. Kanjay writes in, I think that the NXT WrestleMania Weekend Premium Live event Stand and Deliver should just be TakeOver again. Yeah, I know Black and Gold is gone, but they still bring back old Ruthless Aggression era pay-per-views for NXT, so why not keep the Black and Gold flame burning just a little? Why? Just a little bit. The last one was 36, so they could just keep counting alongside WrestleMania. What do you think, Sam? Well, no, I think that they've specifically built Stand and Deliver next to WrestleMania. Like, this is already a brand that they've built. At WrestleMania, they do Stand and Deliver. Like, so no, I think they should do Stand and Deliver. Also, when the draft comes along, who do you think the next crop of main roster guys to become free agents and head on to NXT should be? I think guys like Ricochet or Austin Theory or Cedric Alexander. I have no idea. The draft is like far away. The draft is after WrestleMania. So, you know, I can't make those decisions right now. Adam writes in, have become a regular listener of your podcast over the last few months. Love your work. Thank you very much, Adam. I appreciate that. On the prediction show last week, you mentioned AEW making it clear which shows the tag and trios titles would be defended on, which I completely agree with. However, over on WWE, would you find a way to split the tag team titles back to Raw and SmackDown, and how so? Do you think there's room to introduce a 6-man title in the WWE? There are definitely teams available to do so. Imperium, Lashley, Street Profits. Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not a trios guy. I don't think the trios title is not my cup of tea. I don't think so. I wouldn't mind if they split the tag title again. I think that if you're gonna split the tag team championship, it becomes about. So I think that from the Usos joining the titles, the tag team championship profile was raised, right? It was raised up. So when you look at it, it's like all world title main event guys have held the tag team championship since then, right? It's Jimmy and Jey Uso. It's Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. It's Finn Balor and Damian Priest. It's Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. So I think what they've done is they've spent a good year and a half or more. Well, if you count the whole Usos run, more. But really raising the stake of what the tag team championship is all about. I think that at the same time, if you pay attention to what they've been doing post WrestleMania and beyond in the last especially 6-7 months, they've really been building a tag division. Whether it's bringing the Authors of Pain back, whether it's bringing DIY back, whether it's bringing the Creeds up, like a real tag team division is specifically being built. I would imagine that tag division is being built in an effort to split the tag team championship and in an effort to get those tag championships back on actual tag teams, not on just pure main event guys, which either way is fine. I guess since the Judgment Day are heels, you could do a thing where they have 2 matches in one night and both teams beat them. Or maybe you have 2 matches in one night and they win one but lose the other. And it's like a SmackDown team and a Raw team. And that way they can keep the Raw Tag Team Championship, but they lose the SmackDown Tag Team Championship to like whoever, the Creeds, you know, the Authors of Pain, whatever it is. I guess that's how I would do it, probably just off the top of my head. There are more creative ways to do it, I'm sure, but that's probably what I would do. Corey from Jersey, first-time emailer here. Thanks for being so committed to watching the product in a way that makes your wild speculation thoughtful and meaningful. You know why I do it? Because everything counts. That's why. My wife and I listen to your podcast together, and it's the highlight of our Mondays. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad I can bring couples together. This is better than couples counseling. If you can enjoy me together, you can do anything together. My question for you, now that 3 of Roman's compelling challengers, AJ, Randy, and LA Knight, are all being accounted for in one night with the Fatal 4-Way at the Royal Rumble, and The Rock's recent appearance suggests a match in the near future, do you still hold your previous position that that Roman retains beyond WrestleMania? It sure seems like they're trying to get through as many challengers as possible on the road to WrestleMania. I understand the narrative of beating Hogan's record, but with Bruno and Bob Backlund not disputed to me, still in the distance, I'm not sure how compelling it is for Roman to be shooting for 3rd longest reign instead of 4th longest reign. Does the booking of the Fatal 4-Way match impact your belief that Roman retains beyond WrestleMania? No, it doesn't at all. Because, number one, I think positioning Roman Reigns as a stronger champion than Hulk Hogan was is a big deal. They don't say the 3rd longest reigning. They say he's held the title longer than Hulk Hogan. Right? That's the headline. It goes from, the longest reigning champion of the modern era to over 1,000 days to whatever it is, 1,500 days longer than the immortal Hulk Hogan. That's the headline. It's not about, because first place, second place, third, longer than Hulk Hogan is the headline, right? If he wins this match, he'll hold the title longer than even Hulk Hogan held the title. That's what it's all about. And Hulk Hogan is still a name that carries a lot of weight. There are rumors that they're going to do a 40th anniversary celebration for Hulkamania. Wouldn't it be great if Roman was on the cusp of beating Hogan's record and confronted Hulk Hogan about it? So yeah, and by the rules of the Fatal 4-Way, there's no way that a Fatal 4-Way match between those 3 guys satiates everything. I mean, even WrestleMania 37, he stacked him, and Edge still wanted a singles match. We still got the Edge versus Roman Reigns match at Money in the Bank that year. So I don't think, even if he stacks them, and I hope to God that he stacks them, but even if he stacks them, I think we still have AJ Styles and Randy Orton wanting singles matches with Roman Reigns. Furthermore, Rock, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk are still on the immediate horizon. And who knows between now and WrestleMania what other stars have been built up to the level that they can challenge Roman Reigns. What if this Bobby Lashley thing happens the way I've played it out? Bobby Lashley becomes a monster babyface again. Well, then I think he's in contention to approach Roman Reigns. What if Drew McIntyre, his whole run as a heel is predicated on what happened to him with Roman Reigns? He's a different character now. What if he feels entitled to another match with Roman Reigns? There's a lot to do between now and then. And then the fact is that Gunther, whether it's at Bash in Berlin or not, Gunther Roman, after Gunther Brock happens, people are going to be sitting there going, Gunther Roman is the next match I want to see. I want Gunther to be the one who beats Roman. When Gunther beats Brock Lesnar, people will want him to beat Roman Reigns. So, I don't, this Royal Rumble match changes nothing for me. Bart writes in, greetings from Melbourne. Oh, you're going to be making the trip to Perth? I enjoy the podcast. Great job, especially when people write in emails that hit a nerve. That never happens. The question I wanted to ask is, when wrestlers are told about a match and the outcome, who makes the decision on how long the match lasts? For example, I've seen matches last 20 seconds. Surely no one wants to be thrashed that fast, do they? No, I mean, whoever's in charge of the TV show. They format a TV show, and they go, okay, we have this many minutes on the show. Well, these guys need this much time. Well, I want to get that match out there, but we've only got a certain amount of time. And then sometimes on the fly, whoever's in charge of the TV show goes, look, this match ran over. This segment ran over. So you guys now have 3 minutes instead of 10 minutes because we got to get back on track. So it's all about formatting the television show to be the length that you want it to be. Now, it's a little different now that pay-per-views are streaming, because you don't have the same serious time constraints on it, but you still probably want to hold yourself to a certain amount of time. Like you have in your head, this show shouldn't be any longer than this amount of time. So and this match doesn't need any longer than this amount of time to tell the story. Raj in Queens, Roman and The Rock has to be the main event of night 2 at WrestleMania 40. Thank you. Some people are saying that this should have happened years ago, but they'd prefer to have Cody finish his story at Mania. I'm trusting the process and letting Cody's story cook. Let it cook. The story with The Rock and Roman Reigns is way longer in the making than Cody's story. Let Cody cook, bro. Let Cody cook. The Rock has faced the best from every era in modern wrestling. From WrestleMania, from Hogan to Stone Cold to John Cena, now it's Roman's turn. Bro, me and you, Raj. Roman has been on cruise control since WrestleMania 39. Okay, I mean, I might push back a little on that, but you're saying because everything after WrestleMania 39 was bloodline related, and then the one LA Knight match. Okay. And only adding notches to his belt. Him beating The Rock at Mania is the only way for him to transcend to another level and prove he's the tribal chief and head of the table, further elevating the title so that his eventual downfall will have more meaning. If Roman Reigns is on the brink of falling and doesn't fall off and is even stronger for it, he becomes stronger. And it becomes an even more valuable tool to use. Raj, me and you, dude. Me and you could just sit down and agree with each other for hours and hours and hours. Abby from India. What's up, Abby? Love your podcast. Here's my take on WrestleMania 40. I love how far this podcast reaches. Night 1, Rock versus Roman. Roman wins. Randy versus Cody. Cody wins. Roman versus Cody, main event. Oh, you think you're doing some WrestleMania 30 stuff. Night 2, Seth versus Punk, so that Punk can close the show and it will elevate the World Heavyweight title. I can't imagine Roman versus Rock, Randy versus Cody, Roman versus Cody being night 1, and then Punk having to follow that. For me, I just love the clean Roman versus Rock. That's what WrestleMania is all about. And I'm saying, look, if Roman versus Cody happens, that's night 1's main event because Cody ain't winning the title. And then Punk wins the title night 2, main event. But if it's Rock versus Roman, it has to be night 2 headline. It has to be. Brad writes in, Cody needs to finish his story, but Punk wins the Rumble. Night 1 of WrestleMania is Rock and Roman. Night 2 would be Punk and Rollins. On night 2, Cody has a match with Priest. The Rock pins Roman for the strap. Priest cashes in. Night 2, Cody gets his title match with Priest. Priest cashes in on The Rock. Wouldn't that be something? I mean, it's wild. I mean, I gotta believe that people would be like, what? You brought The Rock back to have Money in the Bank cashed in on him? And then Roman. I mean, and then does anybody really benefit from Roman's title reign? That's my only thing. It's like Rock's the one. And then here's the problem with that. Rock gets to be the one who beat Roman Reigns, which people will not like. After all this, you're going to give the rub to The Rock? Then he loses a fluke match against Damian Priest. So you're like, you brought back The Rock and you just had Damian Priest like roll him up at the end of that match? And then Damian Priest has this big moment, but then Cody Rhodes gets a moment. I feel like I'd be willing to hear that in a I like that more than most Cody theories, but it feels very messy. And man, there's a lot that could go wrong there. Liam writes in, this is my second email now and will not be the last. Sorry, last week's email. I know it was definitely bad. Okay. Well, it's a new good. I like when people take responsibility. Sometimes people email me and they're like, you shouldn't be so mean to people who email you. Well, you should write better emails. I mean, what do you want me to tell you? It's a new week, a new year. Here's my question. What would your thoughts be on if Okada or MJF debuted at the Royal Rumble? Oh, I'd lose my mind. Dude, do you know how great it would be if MJF Pillmaned this whole thing? Do you know how awesome it would be if like MJF really hadn't re-signed with AEW? And he was like, no, I can't re-sign because people will know I re-signed. But I am coming back. Don't worry, Tony Khan. I'm coming back. But if I re-sign, the contract will leak. You know how people are around here. And I don't want that to happen. I'm all about kayfabe, brother. So let me not re-sign. Let me go home and heal up. And then when I'm all healed up, I'll come back and re-sign. And we'll do our story with Adam Cole. It'll be great. It'll be great. And then boom, because you know why? The minute MJF's music hits at the Royal Rumble, I'll tell you, if WWE had MJF, they would not have to worry about Cody's story. Because what would you really rather see? Cody finishing the story or Cody versus MJF at WrestleMania? I'm doing Cody MJF all day. If WWE could get MJF, don't get, see, Liam, don't write me emails like that. This is a good email. But it's too exciting. It's too exciting because I think MJF's re-signed. I have no idea. I didn't ask him. But my gut is that he's already re-signed. But if it is a Pillman, work, shoot, kayfabe thing where he's working the office and he shows up at the Rumble and we can get Cody versus MJF. But honestly, if Okada left New Japan after the match with Bryan and showed up at the Rumble and we can go to WrestleMania with Cody Rhodes versus Okada, that's the other thing. Who's to say? We got an AJ Styles debut at the Rumble. Who's to say we won't get some spectacular Rumble surprise and Cody will have an even better match for himself at WrestleMania? Okada versus Cody? I'm fine with that. I would hope that you are too. Yeah, that'd be exciting. I don't know if either of those two are happening, but that would be exciting. Usman writes in, love the show and your recent interviews. I really enjoyed your 2024 preview, which has me thinking more long-term about Rock versus Roman's WrestleMania build. As you pointed out, there's still plenty of runway to continue telling the story of the bloodline. Why tell the story of The Rock and Roman in just 3 months when The Rock returned in 2011 to feud with Cena? Each match was promoted over the entire year. Do you believe WWE? No, I already answered that. No. We are not on board for a year-long build. Nicholas writes in, hi, boss. Happy New Year to you and your family. Happy New Year to you. And that cute dog with the pajamas. Those are Christmas PJs. She still had her Christmas PJs when old Copeland showed up. Papa Edge. So instead of complaining, I'm trying to make the best of the situation. That's right. That's the way we live. Yes, I was disappointed by the reveal of the devil. Okay. But now if the point of this is to finally make something with Wardlow, I'm all for it. They did put him in that position to be the guy who challenges for the title. Do you think he'll win the world title? No. And then refuse to give it to Cole so the two have a match once Cole is cleared. I know you have a big title plan for your boy Swerve, but I think Wardlow could be a big player too. I'd almost rather see Swerve get it and then have a rivalry with Wardlow. Here's the thing, although it would be interesting, right, if Wardlow gets the title. The best part about Samoa Joe being the champion of AEW, by the way, is that every potential match sounds awesome. Anyone could challenge Samoa Joe. And I'm going, I would love to see that match. I wonder what the common denominator is. The one good thing about that would be if Wardlow won the title and then Adam Cole turned babyface because he needed to get the title from Wardlow, but then MJF returned. See, that's Adam Cole can't turn on the Undisputed Kingdom anytime soon because they just formed and he just turned and turned again. So you can't just have him keep turning. And I don't think Wardlow has the credibility to be the AEW champion right now. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I think that he hasn't been used in a proper way so far. But I do like that this does put him on that platform of even getting a world title match with Samoa Joe is a good thing. He doesn't have to win the title. Just being in the main event is a good thing. Bobby writes in, Sam, Spear Samoan Spike combo rules. Hope you had a great holiday season. Yeah, it really does rule. Brandon writes in, Happy New Year to you and your family. Wishing you continued growth and success this year. I feel the same way about you, Brandon. It's almost the fourth quarter for wild speculation season. So after watching your emergency episode of The Rock calling out Roman, I'm giving it a go in hopes I don't get buried. Although I might be out of luck when I tell you I thought of this wild speculation prior to going back and finishing your 2024 predictions podcast. I do watch the product, just sometimes my way of watching is all over the place. That's okay. I feel like I do a lot of hours of talking about wrestling, and so I don't expect that everybody can watch everything all at once. It's very plausible The Rock could face Roman at Elimination Chamber, but let's be frank. This match has been dreamt of for 3+ years, and it's possibly the biggest match ever in WWE history if it's pulled off. I agree. This match is meant for one night and one night only. That's night 2 of WrestleMania for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. Brandon, your lips to God's ears. And like you said it, The Rock isn't going to take the effort to tease something on Raw and not deliver. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that this will be the Mania match, meaning Cody won't finish his story at Mania. And by the way, even if The Rock wasn't back, I don't think Cody would have finished anyway. Now, instead of taking the normal route of fantasy booking, what show he'll finish his story at and who it will be against, I want to take a shot at fantasy booking the character of Cody Rhodes upon realizing he won't be able to finish his story at WrestleMania, okay? I think the idea of having Cody Rhodes become desperate to finish his story becomes even more interesting than having him continue to be this cool, calm, and collective babyface. It's an evolution of his story. Not saying he has to quote-unquote turn heel, but simply begin to realize that maybe he won't finish his story. Panic sets in, desperation begins to crawl out, and then drastic measures are taken to finish the story. This can culminate at SummerSlam or even Mania 41. But either way, when he does finish the story, it's not what he thought it would be. The road he had to take to get there was an ugly one. I don't know. I mean, possibly, but like, you don't want, unless he's going to full-on turn heel, you don't want desperation. It's not an attractive trait. You know? You don't want him to, like, the beautiful thing about Cody Rhodes as a babyface is that he's a pure babyface. We've had a lot of babyfaces that aren't real pure babyfaces. And I mean, if he's going to be a babyface, he should be a babyface. I think there are other stories you can tell that people aren't giving credence to. I think that people limiting Cody to the story of the story is too limiting. And I think WWE knows exactly what they're doing. The fact that The Rock was on Raw and they're still, as of Friday, talking about Cody Rhodes finishing the story, it's not an accident. Everything counts. There's a plan here for Cody. Jonathan writes in, Sam, big fan of the show from Winnipeg in Canada. I'm from Winnipeg, you idiot. Thanks for everything. I need some help. Am I overthinking this, or does everything count? This past week on SmackDown, during the Santos Escobar Kevin Owens match, Logan Paul was on commentary. During the match, Logan says, I just flew in from Puerto Rico. Could this be a super subtle hint at a Bad Bunny match in the future? I know we've all been fantasy booking this for a while. At what point does everything count cross the line into speculate wildly territory? Thank you. That's the line. No, I mean, Logan Paul lives in Puerto Rico. I don't think that was I'm not saying we'll never get a Bad Bunny Logan Paul match, but I don't think that was a hint that that's happening anytime soon. Logan Paul lives in Puerto Rico. It's a fabulous place to live. I think he was just bragging. Okay, last email of the day. It's enough. Last email. Hey, Sam. This is from Mike. Okay, I've got one that just seems crazy, but I mean, we speculate wildly here, right? Yes, we do. And I realize that sometimes people attempt to do that, and it's an eye roll. I mean, it's a lot more than an eye roll. Sometimes I start cursing people out. But I can't stop thinking about something. I saw a clip of an interview with Ava Raine mentioning a wise man told me in something pertaining to NXT, not pertaining to bloodline business. Now, it could be nothing, but in a world where everything matters, everything counts, could this be planting seeds? Then I thought more and thought, what if Roman and Rock have their match, whatever it ends up being, and Ava comes out and screws over The Rock, joining the bloodline and betraying her father? I feel like this adds a new layer to the bloodline story, keeping it going. Even still, again, I know this is out there, but what do you think? Do you think Ava being included in this story could be a possibility, or am I just overthinking? I mean, it's not out of the realm, certainly. I don't think that that's a bad thing to consider. But I just think that like when Solo Sikoa interferes, you know there can be a payoff. When Ava Raine interferes, is that payoff as possible? I would argue no. I think Ava Raine would have to be used in a primarily vocal role. Now, this could be one of the reasons why she's taken on that sort of assistant GM role on NXT, is because they want to get her comfortable on the mic, because she will join the Bloodline, or she could join the Bloodline at some point, and when that happens, it's mainly going to be on the microphone, and the people on the Bloodline have to be top-tier performers. I'm not saying it won't happen. I just don't know if that's how I would do it, but it's not crazy. It's certainly not crazy. All right, I'll do one more. Joe writes in, longtime listener. Do you think that wrestlers should hold off on the smart comments teasing about other wrestlers coming back? For example, Jinder finally in his promo, which was otherwise excellent, immediately made you think The Rock. Then The Rock comes out. It was huge, but it surely would have been even bigger if it was truly out of nowhere. Same on SmackDown when Pat McAfee says, this is the people show, and you know what that means, The Rock enters. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I mean, come on, dude. No. I think, like, if you're watching, right? If you're watching the show, and it's just Jinder out there being completely unrelated, and he's going to go on and on, if you don't think The Rock is coming out at all, then you might go like, I thought The Rock was going to come out. This ain't for me. I think teasing it is fine. You know, no. And Pat said, this is the people show, and you know what that means. That's like one of those, oh my God, no way. If it's about to happen within 1 minute, then no, I don't think there's anything wrong. Not every single thing has to come out of nowhere. You know, these are all, you're citing two references to surprises that were absolutely still surprises and were great. So, you know, no, I don't. I think that you might be asking a little too much of people to not within the segment tease. Like, I know what you're thinking. Come on. No, I don't think so. I appreciate all you guys, though, and I appreciate you for writing in. You can email in anytime, notsamwrestling@gmail.com. It's notsamwrestling@gmail.com. We'll get to the emails next week when I'm back here for another episode of Not Sam Wrestling. In the meantime, don't forget, if you're listening on Apple, subscribe, review, and rate. If you're listening on Spotify, subscribe and rate. If you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing out, because all of your senses need to be stimulated by yours truly. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit like, leave comments, talk to each other in the comments. It's a great spot for you guys to hash everything out. And of course, Not Sam Wrestling Live goes down January 26th, Friday, 5 p.m., SideSplitters in Tampa, Florida. Go to notsamlive.com for tickets, and we'll see you again very soon here on Not Sam Wrestling.